which will be coming up next. Welcome, Benjamin.
Thank you, Eric, for the nice introduction. I'm also well aware of the challenge. I'm pretty much staying between you guys and your lunch break. So with this in mind, we thought we need to prepare you a very interesting agenda for today around the topic opportunities in Ethiopia. So we will be covering, therefore, three main topics. So Rockstone Real Estate, so you better understand a bit the DNA of our organization. The second will be Ethiopia, so you also understand what makes Ethiopia. I know in the crowd there's some people already very active in the region or in the country, sorry, but on the other hand there's also people less active there, and therefore putting everybody at the same level, informing you about the country and its opportunities. And last but not least, we will cover Kefita, one of our projects, and the progress we have been having so far. Speaking about the organization, I have my colleague Chris Evert, which is with me along the journey throughout Africa. And he's very knowledgeable about the country because I think it's already 17 years that he's here, and my partner in crime to tackle our growth or our expansion throughout Africa. Who are we? We are a real estate developer from Germany, which has 8 locations, obviously in Germany through our stronghold, which is our stronghold, with 4 main offices, Frankfurt, Munich, Hamburg and Berlin, and grew south actually, through Portugal, Spain, Addis Ababa and Nairobi. What I'd like to emphasize on is, as I've mentioned, our particular DNA, which translates in 2 things, a geographical expansion, as you can observe from my statements, and product expansion. How do you see that? We have, I would like to mention 2 projects for that. So the first being at the bottom corner, the Marco Polo Tower. What did we do differently? Beginning of the 2000, there was a rezoning program in the city of Hamburg, where basically the harbor was repurposed for residential and commercial development, and we reacted very swiftly and wanted to develop that, and came with a building with a very unconventional shape at the time for Hamburg, and grew quite some recognition. Another illustration of that is the innovation center that we are currently kicking off in Munich, where the idea at the back end of the COVID crisis was to basically put together innovation, so R&D, labs, and manufacture on one site, right? And what makes Rockstone here also different is that we are always trying to tackle complexities through partnership, right? With that, let's go to the next slide. Ethiopia. So, as I've mentioned, some of you know the country a bit more, some others a bit less. What is very standing out, obviously, now it's almost the 6-month anniversary of the peace agreement, right? It was signed on November 2nd, and clearly very important because obviously we have a large international community meeting in the city. This is also very closely linked to our national airline, I will say, which is connecting Addis Ababa, the capital city, with many cities, like 130. And what is more interesting is the trend that came with the peace agreement, mainly the fact that the airline is starting to add destination on a monthly basis, at least one on a monthly basis. This obviously had also some direct repercussion on the economy, and mainly 2 things I will mention here is we were able to continue the reform program, which has already been kicked off before COVID, right, and accelerated it. You are all aware of Safaricom being in the country now since 3 years almost, or 2.5 years. And this trend of liberalization, keeping in mind that we have a state, a social economy as a past as a social economy, is a key determining factor for the future growth. In fact, meanwhile, the GDP forecast for 2023 is as big as the one of Kenya, and more interestingly, in my opinion, the growth forecast for real GDP is 6% for the 4 next years. How does this translate in terms of real estate opportunities? I will come to. Now, so 3 main segments where we see the main opportunities. Obviously, building up on the large international community and the gap or the mismatch between the community and their expectation and what's available on the market. What we observe is that there is this mismatch which translate in above average prices, rental prices, and also the possibility to charge rent in a hard currency. In addition to that, if we look at the commercial sector, here we see a similar pattern, not linked to the private people, but more to the international organizations that are also struggling to find the right shoe for their feet, in the sense that they are seeking for office space, grade A office spaces, which is substantially lacking in the economy, and for the most valiant of these organizations, they will tend to go down the route of adopting a build-to-suit strategy. Last and not least, also in the strategy of having dollar-yielding assets or building dollar-yielding assets, there's a very interesting play that stands out, especially with the transportation and logistics sector being liberalized, that we have observed, and as you all are aware, there is a substantial need in warehouses, in logistics centers, and so on and so forth, and there Rockstone sees also a very strong possibility. With that, how does it translate for Rockstone, and how did we start our journey in Addis Ababa or Ethiopia? We started with a high-end residential building, which is a green building, very important. It's in the process of being HED certificated, and as importantly, we were nominated, or we received the award for Best Sustainable Residential Development, Best of Africa. How do you achieve that? Here in this case, it's a G+20 apartment building with 105 apartments, roughly 25,000 GFA. What is very different from our competitor locally is that we strictly follow the Ethiopian code, but more importantly, also the European code, obviously to suit our future tenant, which will be the international community. We have been inspired, obviously, by the international, our international knowledge while designing the apartments, and focused ourselves on 2, 3, and 4 bedroom apartments. What is also interesting in this building is that we have 3.5 floors of parking, alleviating our amenities floor. So we have one amenities floor, which is obviously enhancing the living experience of the building, and then 17th floor of apartments. A maximum of 7 apartments per floor. Obviously, the higher you get, the lower the number of apartments. Last but not least, what do we offer as extended services for this kind of like-minded community? Here, above the traditional one, which are gym, yoga room, and so on and so forth, we have obviously a cafeteria, but we also have a spa area, which massage, sauna, etc. And as interestingly, a big event room for 250 plus people, and also a playground for children, and most importantly, a co-working space. How does it look today? Here, the latest update. So we almost finished with the shell and core. You see the facade, which is really characterizing our building, which is inspired actually by the weaving tradition that we have in Ethiopia, where basically column and floor slab are intertwining and give the feeling of a nice texture, right? Obviously, it's all fair face concrete, and we also are working in parallel, meaning the shell and core being finished and the finishing work is starting. With that, I also want to emphasize the last thing. This is obviously our first project here in Africa, but we are here especially for the reason that we are also in discussion already in Nairobi and in Kenya, I should say, and in the neighboring country for additional projects. And as I've mentioned at the beginning, we're always keen on partnership, and we are actually actively looking for that. So I would be delighted to exchange with you guys if you have any interest. So yeah, thank you very much for listening.